I'm glad she's back. I'm with Caroline Levitt on this. I'm Team Caroline Levitt. I'm so glad that Kamala Harris is back. We're going to have so much more great content. I mean, great is, great, not great content, and you know what I mean. I'm going to have great content based on Kamala Harris's not so great content. What's up? This is Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. Thank you so much for joining us today, folks. So excited that you're here. So excited that you made it because, man, we've got a lot of stuff. There's breaking news, of course. Breaking news, which we're going to get to here in just a minute, involving one of our good friends, former Congressman Mike Waltz, and now maybe former NSA director as well. Lots of formers going on when you talk about Mike Waltz. But we did have breaking news just before the program, just as I was sitting down, getting ready to go, getting everything situated, watching President Donald Trump at the prayer breakfast talk about, Dr. Phil and the Pope and all these things. All of a sudden, breaking news. We got a Fox News alert about Mike Waltz.
All right, there's a breaking news that happened in the commercial break. So what you're looking at photographs right now of Michael Waltz. He is the president's national security advisor, except for we just got news that he is going to be leaving the administration along with his deputy, Alex Wong. Of course, if you might remember the story of Signalgate. I don't know if that's for a particular reason, but there was some consternation among some people about Mike Waltz, who you might remember was a congressman, Green Beret, a long history and career in foreign policy. And I believe
yeah, there we go. That was the breaking news alert from Fox News. Now, the interesting thing about that is that Mike Waltz, just like an hour before that, was on Fox. He was on Fox and Friends this morning talking about the administration and Iran and all the first 100 days accomplishments.
Well, Brian, this deal is good for the American taxpayer that is recouping the billions of dollars that we've put into supporting Ukraine. It's good for Ukraine and helping it grow the pie in terms of its development and reconstruction. And it's good for its security, where you have 50-50. The Development Finance Corporation with the Treasury Department that is investing in the critical minerals, the rare earth elements that the United States need and Ukraine needs for its future. Security. Where you have
now that is, of course, Mike Waltz just this morning. And it's interesting because we assume that he knew this report was coming out. And again, we don't have confirmation from the White House. There's been no official release. There's been no official statement from the White House. But this has been the breaking news all morning long. Everybody and their mother reporting that Mike Waltz apparently and also his deputy Wong are both out. And we know that Laura Loomer had a couple of run-ins with the president where she explained that she didn't believe that the current NSA team was acting in the president's best interests, or that they had the president's loyalty or were loyal to the president and his administration. So look, there's a lot of stuff we've heard about his back and forth with Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, and whether or not Signalgate was the straw that broke the camel's back, and whether or not they were just waiting for the opportune moment to make an announcement. But there's a couple things at play here. If this is true, if Donald Trump fired Mike Waltz, we know that he fired Mike Waltz for a couple of reasons. Number one, probably the Signalgate case was one of the reasons why, but he didn't do it exactly or immediately after Signalgate, because that would seem like he was giving in to media pressure, and Donald Trump never gives in to media pressure. Never. We've seen him with ABC News. We've seen him with the fake news media. He's not going to give in to the media at all. And a lot of people behind the scenes, a lot of folks in the White House administration are saying that Signalgate may have actually kept Mike Waltz around a lot longer than people originally wanted him to be there. They think that he was probably on the outs before Signalgate, and then after Signalgate, President Donald Trump said, well, I'm definitely not firing him now because everyone's going to think that's why. Again, no official word yet. But we are going to... it seems like all signs are pointing to a change at the National Security Advisor position. Now, again, it's not just Mike Waltz, but it's his entire team. The deputies, President Donald Trump has already released some other national security advisory positions over the past few weeks. And it's a bummer. Look, we're good friends with Mike Waltz. We've known him forever. He's been on our show. We've eaten ice cream together. We've swapped stories. He was a congressman in District 6, just down the road. And what stinks is that he gave up his congressional seat to become President Trump's national security advisor. We had a special election for a candidate here in District 6 who replaced him, who was not nearly as popular as Mike Waltz was in that district. And now Mike Waltz apparently maybe out of a job when he could have just stayed in Congress. You know, they always say the grass is greener, isn't it? And the grass is, they always say the grass, you go to Congress and you're kicking it, you're doing a great job in Congress. And then all of a sudden they come along and say, you want to be national security advisor? You go, okay. And then you blink and 100 days later, you're neither a congressman or the national security advisor. Yes, sometimes it works out. For example, Marco Rubio was in the Senate. He was killing it in the Senate. And then President Donald Trump came along and said, do you want to be Secretary of State? And he said, yes, I do. Si, senor. And now he's killing it as Secretary of State. So sometimes it works out great. Sometimes not so much, but we will be keeping our eye out, and we will be looking to see the latest on whether or not Mike Waltz is truly done at the NSA, whether or not he's being, and this is the thing, they could be reassigning him, they could be finding him some other job, they could be creating a soft landing for him, or they could just say, hey, get your stuff, get your stuff and get out. I wouldn't be you know what? When you're running a country the size of the United States of America, when you have a goal like President Donald Trump has, which is ultimate security here in the United States, ultimate security at home, ultimate security abroad, ending wars in the Middle East, ending wars in Ukraine, all of these things. When that's when that's your goal, when that's your big deal, when that's your reason for living and getting up in the morning, then sometimes you have to make some difficult decisions. Sometimes you have to make a change where you may or not want to. And it appears that one of those changes is about to happen. And again, it's been 100 days. Now, you may remember the first time around in the first administration, there were changes well before the 100-day mark. And a lot of those were caused by outside forces that President Donald Trump allowed to alter his decision-making inside the White House. He let the outside forces change what was going on inside the White House, and I think he hated that and regretted it and vowed never to make that mistake again. But this appears to be a decision, again, if it is true, of Donald Trump's own making. So we will follow that. We will follow that along. Somebody else who may be ousted from their position very soon is much more exciting to me, and that is Vice Chairman of the DNC, David Hogg. Now, you may remember David Hogg as the obnoxious kid from Orlando, or from Parkland rather, who became an anti-gun advocate and just a really whiny biatch after the horrible Parkland shooting here in Florida. And he rose to prominence. He kind of really rode the coattails of a lot of his cohorts, untimely deaths. I mean, this gun attack, this tragedy at Parkland is something that David Hogg looked at and said, I think I can make something of myself off of this. So he propelled himself into the spotlight and rose through the ranks of the left-wing lunatics who want to take your guns away. Well, now he's the DNC vice chair. He's second in command at the Democratic National Convention. And a couple people are really upset about it. First of all, is this woman who is, I don't know, what is she? She's like a Native American woman who is totally annoyed because the Democrat Party is supposed to be the party of DEI. The Democrat Party is supposed to be the party of diversity. The Democrat Party is supposed to be the party of, inclusiveness. And they have two white dudes leading the party right now. And they're working on a third because they're trying to bring Tim Walz back, but we'll get to that in just a minute. So David Hogg is hated inside the party because he's just too white and just too male. And he's hated in the party because, well, he went after James Carville when James Carville called him a twerp. And now James Carville is starting a civil war and calling not just for Democrats to oust David Hogg, but for them to sue David Hogg. This is James Carville with Fox News. Listen to this back and forth about David Hogg.
And unfortunately for you, the DNC vice chair, David Hogg, has said this about you and his role in the Democratic Party.
Let's remind ourselves, yes, James Carville, obviously he was Bill Clinton's campaign manager. He has a lot of experience. He's been around for a while. The last election he won was before I was born. But let's remember that experience is only as useful as it is effective. Carville said that Kamala Harris was going to win in a landslide. Look at what happened, right?
That's what he says to you, calling him a twerp, James.
Right. Well, I think the idea of an official of the Democratic National Committee raising money to run against other Democrats, and by the way, I just did an appearance with him and told him that's what I thought, and I wasn't going to change my mind. As it turns out, as generally you do these kinds of things, you find you agree more. But the Democrats have never nominated the most liberal person. That's just something, that's another fact. Okay? Scurry around the newsroom. We have never nominated the most liberal person. What happens is the most liberal, far-out, left-wing Democrat gets all the coverage on Fox, gets all the coverage, oh, my God, look how big the crowds are. And in my business, in your old business in sports, we count runs, we count touchdowns, we count goals. In my business, we count election returns. We don't say, well, gee, the White Sox outdrew well, I drew much. They drew the an example, but it's not the team.
James,
it's the team that wins the most games.
It's only the Dallas Cowboys that count on the seats, the butts in the seats over the wins.
I was looking for a comparison. I got stuck there for a second.
Okay, so clearly James Carville has no idea what he's talking about. He starts with a metaphor and an analogy. He can't even end it. This is exactly what David Hogg was talking about. James Carville hasn't won an election since before he was born. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if he's hitting the sauce. I don't know if his brain's deteriorating. I don't know if it's the old age, but he can't even complete a comprehensive thought anymore. Not like he ever really could. When you couple it with that weird Cajun accent, it makes it very difficult to understand. But there is the long and the short of it is there's a civil war in the Democrat Party, and it's between the old guard and these new whippersnappers. And James Carville is right about one thing. In the old days, they used to count election results. And whoever got the most election results, that was your winner. Bill Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, those kinds of dinosaurs. But now it's all about the fame. It's all about the fortune. They got a bunch of social media influencers out there who are all vying for likes and shares. They want the lion's portion of the YouTube views. And they want the sound bites. That's why you have Maxwell Frost flying down to El Salvador with the El Salvador 4. That's why you have Jasmine Crockett, who's cursing every single chance she gets and spewing racist, hateful rhetoric and anti-handicapped people comments about the Governor Abbott of Texas. That's why you have Cory Booker, who stood up for 25 hours yelling about Donald Trump for no apparent reason. But you know what? He got a little bit of face time, and now a lot more people know the name Cory Booker than they did before that day he wasted standing in front of the Senate screaming and yelling about whatever it was he was screaming and yelling about. And so David Hogg and James Carville faced off on some kind of podcast where James Carville basically just said, you know what? You're the worst. You need to go. And in fact, I don't even think that firing you is enough. I think your fellow Democrats should sue you.
And you said that members of the DNC should sue him for doing this, since David is a member of the party leadership. He is the vice chairman.
I think he's the vice chair.
Yeah, he's vice chair.
Let me be very specific. I think it is abominable that an official of a political party who is being paid or supported by that political party to go out and raise money to defeat members of the same party. I think that's a jackassery of the highest level.
James, can you tell me what
if you want to beat Republicans, of which of course lefties never do, they never even run against them. That's one thing. I'm not into beating Democrats. I'm into beating Republicans. And will tell you right to your face, I think it's abominable that you have anything to do with the DNC and you're going to go and raise $20 million to beat other Democrats.
I mean, I don't know where he's been, but look, this is not the first time the Democrat National Committee has raised money to beat Democrats. Does he not know what Nancy Pelosi did for years? Nancy Pelosi, when she was in charge of the House of Representatives, she was able to get everything she wanted pushed through Congress. She was able to get every single member of Congress to vote lockstep with whatever she demanded because she threatened, and oftentimes did, run candidates against her own party. If you said, Nancy, I'm sorry, I just can't vote yes on this, she said, great, we're gonna bring in millions of dollars, we're gonna run against you, we're gonna primary you, and you're never gonna step foot in the Capitol building again unless you get a visitor's pass from the visitor center. And so these people fell in line. This is how the Democrat Party works. I don't know where I'm sure they did it back in James Carville and Bill Clinton's day as well. This is not a new concept. The Democrat Party has been running against itself forever because they don't just want Democrats in office. They want Democrats who are loyal to the cause and they are loyal to the leadership. And the elites that run the Democrat Party, the Clintons, the Pelosi's, the Schumers, the Obamas, all of these folks, they want people not just who will vote Democrat, but who will vote the way they tell them and expect them to. And if you don't fall into line and if you don't vote lockstep, they will 100% raise money to defeat you. They will 100% find a candidate to primary you. They will boot you out of your seat because they don't care about the party. They care about themselves. It's the same way in the Republican Party. I happen to know a guy who's interested in running against a Republican. Why? Well, because that Republican is more like a Democrat than like a Republican. And if you have a Republican who votes with the Democrats, what's the point of having a Republican? You basically have a Democrat. So you need to get rid of those Democrats / Republicans, or rhinos as we like to call them, and replace them with pure-blooded America First MAGA conservative Republicans. Like, oh, I don't know, this guy right here. And if you're listening to the podcast, I'm pointing at myself with both my thumbs. 2 thumbs pointed right at my own nipples. My own chest, whatever it is. Hey, listen, before we get on to the continued Democrat breakdown, before we get on to the continued, they're all out. This is a party that is totally collapsing. We've got Kamala Harris in her big primetime return to politics. We've got Ana Navarro almost crying on CNN. It got so bad. Abby Phillips, by the way, has lost total control of her show. She can't control any of her guests, but we've got all this stuff. We're going to bring it to you. But before we do, make sure that you're subscribed to this channel. If you're watching us live, hi, what's going on? Make sure you're subscribed and you hit notifications so that every time we go live, you'll be able to see us. If you're watching us on Rumble or Facebook, hi. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure you like and follow the page so that every time we go live on Rumble or Facebook, you'll be able to get us. If you're on X, man, we would love a follow on X. And of course, if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify or iTunes or iHeart or wherever you happen to be, go ahead and hit follow so that you can get this information whenever we publish it. And we publish it literally all the time. Like after I'm done publishing this information, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go I'm going to go publish something else. I'm in a constant content creation frenzy. And President Donald Trump doesn't make it easy. I'm going to be honest with you. Just when I go, okay, phew, I can sit down and create some content and post some videos and edit the podcast and get up there. Boom, he's out speaking again. There was a press conference this morning with Stephen Miller and Caroline Leavitt. They were talking about Kamala Harris, and I was editing that. And then all of a sudden, I see Donald Trump pop up for the National Day of Prayer breakfast. And I was like, oh my gosh, got to make some content about that. But then all of a sudden, Mike Waltz is getting fired. And I'm thinking to myself, it's never ending. There could be 9 of me. There still wouldn't be enough for all of the stuff that we need to cover and all of the stuff that we need to get to. Before we get to the Republicans, though, I want to get to the Democrats because they're in bad shape, man. They're in bad shape. They lost elections. They've got President Donald Trump making the country great again. I mean, they're beside themselves. They're arguing with each other. They're suing each other. They're ousting each other. James Carville's calling David Hogg a twerp. David Hogg's calling James Carville an old dinosaur who can't win elections. Both are right, by the way. It's amazing. James Carville can call David Hogg a twerp, and David Hogg can say you can't win an election, and both of them are accurate. They're both correct statements. That's how bad the Democrat Party is getting. But then you've got Senator Chuck Schumer, who's doing no Democrat any favor by demanding that he remain in power. He is the minority leader in the Senate. And he's been in Senate leadership, God, for a very long time. And now everybody's looking at him saying, you got to go. And your time is done. It's over for you. Hashtag Chuck Schumer is over party. That's what they're all screaming, and Chuck Schumer refuses to go. Here's the problem with Chuck Schumer. He thought that Joe Biden was the problem, so he and Nancy Pelosi and everybody else, they got together and they figured out a way to get rid of Joe Biden. And if you read the books, if you know the legend, Chuck Schumer drove to the beach house it was a long and painful drive for him. He was going to have to be the one to tell his old friend and compatriot, the man he'd worked with in the Senate for decades, the man whom he'd served with as vice president and now president. It was his job, Chuck Schumer, to travel to Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and sit down with his old buddy, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., and tell him that his career in politics was over. He was the one to stab his friend in the back. He was the one. To Chuck Schumer. That was his job, and he did it. Little did he know that he was next on the chopping block, and now they all want Chuck Schumer gone. Listen to this. This is Chuck Schumer yesterday. It's the exact same press conference. The first question is the first part is Chuck Schumer blasting Donald Trump for the CNN poll numbers that say Donald Trump's polling is way down and he's one of the least effective and positively seen presidents in his first 100 days. The second part is the same exact press conference just a few minutes later when Chuck Schumer gets asked a question about his own failing poll numbers. Listen to this. It's incredible.
Americans are noticing. The polls this week show Trump has the lowest 100-day approval rating since they started polling 80 years ago, the lowest. Even worse, 72% of Americans think it's likely that Trump's handling of the economy will walk us directly into a recession. People who hate what Trump is proposing. Yes.
There was a poll out today that has your approval ratings lower than any other congressional leader at 17%. Are you concerned that you may be a liability for your party?
Polls come and go. Our party is united. We're on our front foot. We're stepping forward and going after Trump and having real success.
All right, so when Donald Trump's poll numbers are down, according to CNN, Chuck Schumer can't believe it. The poll numbers are down. They're lower than any president since they started polling. The American people have taken notice. But when the reporter says, would you like to comment on your poll numbers, which are also historically low, what does he say?
Polls come and go. Our party is united. We're on our front foot. We're stepping forward and going after Trump and having real success.
This is not Chuck Schumer 10 years apart. Like when he was talking about the filibuster. Filibuster's bad. Filibuster's good. Filibuster's a necessary tool. Filibuster is a roadblock to democracy. We're not talking 10 years later. We're not talking 10 days later. We're not talking, hey, he's talking to one group about Donald Trump's poll numbers and he said this, and then hours later he goes to a press conference and no, the same press conference. It's separated by a matter of seconds. Chuck Schumer at the beginning of the press conference said this about polls.
Americans are noticing. The polls this week show Trump has the lowest 100-day approval rating since they started polling.
Okay, and then Chuck Schumer at the end of the press conference, when asked about his own low poll numbers.
Polls come and go. Our party is united.
I mean, come on. It's like they're debating themselves. He's literally debating himself. Donald Trump's poll numbers are terrible. Polls come and go. The American people have taken notice. Our party is united. It's instant hypocrisy. This is like the microwave of hypocrisy. It used to be with the Democrats, if you wanted to see their hypocrisy, you had to you had to put them in the oven. You had to wait a couple of hours. Maybe you had to wait for the yeast to rise. Well, I don't know what it was. But now the hypocrisy is instant. It's in the same exact press conference and they want him out. They want this guy gone. They want him out of there. They say Chuck Schumer is he's the new reason why the Democrats are so bad. He can't bring the Democrats together. He can't bring the Democrats together to vote against President Donald Trump's budget. He's the reason why Chuck Schumer doesn't have the backbone or the power. Remember, he had to go on The View and explain himself away. He had to go on all the Sunday morning shows. He had to go on MSNBC with Reverend Al Sharpton, who asked him if he was going to retire. And he said, no, I'm not retiring. And then he gets out there and contradicts himself within minutes of, well, himself. It's a bad scene. I got tons, by the way. I haven't even gotten to Kamala Harris, and I've got tons of cringeworthy Democrat comments. Let's go to CNN, shall we? You guys want to go to CNN? If you want to go to CNN, just stick around because we're into it. Abby Phillips has this show on CNN. You may know it's like this round table show, and I even forget what it's called, but that's where our buddy Scott Jennings is. He's great, and he may be running for, this is the good news. Scott Jennings, who has been one of the best Republican commentators on TV. He's been the bright shining star on CNN. And it's really interesting because the most powerful voice for the Republican Party isn't on Fox News. The most powerful voice for the Republican Party isn't even on Newsmax. The most powerful voice for the Republican Party is on CNN. And I think that's probably, you know, when you're surrounded by enemies, you become stronger. When you're fighting every single day, you fight harder, you become more skilled. You know, if you wake up in the morning, walk into work, and you're wielding a sword or battling back opponents constantly, you're going to become sharper, stronger. You're going to be able to fight back quickly. You're going to be able to hit a right hook that really connects. When you're at Fox News or Newsmax and you're preaching to the choir, yeah, you may have a great mind. You may have great political points, but you kind of blend in with the rest of the group. Scott Jennings has become a political powerhouse on CNN because he's one of the few Republicans there who stands up every single day to the Democrat lunacy. And that's why he's being tapped now to replace Mitch McConnell in Kentucky. He said, if Donald Trump wants me, I'll answer the call. If Donald Trump supports me, I'll run for Senate in Kentucky. And he was actually at the Michigan rally the other day with President Donald Trump, who brought him up on stage. So there is a good chance, there is a good possibility that Scott Jennings will leave CNN and go run for the Senate in Kentucky, which CNN does not want to happen because this guy's the only good thing they got going for him. But here he is on Abby Phillips' show where he calls some woman angry, and Abby Phillips just gets, well, angry.
Most Americans would agree that they want to get rid of fraud and waste. Yes. And now you're saying that the greatest accomplishment of DOGE was that they've solved IT problems?
And I spoke to another cabinet secretary yesterday who said this has been a, quote, wonderful accelerant.
So what?
This continues. The program continues.
Whatever they say to be able to put on a good face.
Why are you so angry?
I'm not angry. I'm frustrated.
I mean, you look enraged.
I'm frustrated like most Americans because we want to know where the cuts are.
Gretchen, let me just hit pause here. I mean, look. People get worked up at this table, yes. Yourself included, all the time. Let's not call people angry when they're simply making a point.
Well, she's very upset.
Like I just have to say that because I think that
you're blaming it on IT.
Let's deal with.
I'm not blaming anything. I'm saying it was a good byproduct.
Scott and Gretchen, just give me 1 second, okay? Let's deal with the issues at hand. We don't have to, say you're angry. You're, this. She's just making a point, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so by the way, and women, especially women of color, have a real issue with being called angry. It's a notable thing. You call a woman angry, you call a woman of color angry, and they get really angry. I don't want to. I'm not even getting into the irony of it all. But you can see it here on full display. Well, that later that same day, listen to Ana Navarro get into it with, I forget the guy's name. He's the other Republican. They found a black Republican on CNN because I guess they figured they wanted a little bit of DEI in their conservative leadership. Listen, this is where it goes totally off the rails. And Abby Phillips, unable to get anybody back into the stall, has to just drop out and go right to commercial with the guests screaming and yelling on top of each other.
No, I know you're not. If you come to this country illegally, you are going home. Simple as that. We do not have unlimited resources.
I think a lot of Americans
to take care of other people.
There's a hell of a lot of people other than the black people who were brought here as slaves who came to this country illegally.
They're not the same as black people who were brought here against our will.
That's exactly what I just said. I said there is a lot of people
There's a big difference. There is a big difference.
That's exactly what I just said.
There's a big difference.
That's exactly what I just said, Sir Michael. Look and act indignant. That's exactly what I just said.
It's not about acting indignant.
Let me just share Michael.
Other than the black
and share Michael, please.
There are a lot of people from
Michael, I think you actually misheard what I think you misheard what she said.
No, he purposely misheard.
She said.
I purposely
yes, she did.
So now you're in my
Share
brain?
Michael, listen to me for just a second.
Is that where we're going?
You think I would say I will have advocated for black people my entire life and say something like that?
Because you've advocated for black people, great, congratulations. Last time I checked, I'm black, you're not.
Okay, Share Michael.
That's right. I'm Latino and my people are being racially profiled.
It is.
And do I have to remind you the history of my people?
Share
Do I want to go there?
No, I don't.
Okay, we're going to go to break. Raul Reyes, thank you very much for joining us. Everybody else, hang tight. We'll be right back.
When I was studying history,
they leave their microphones on. And props to the producer. Whoever left their microphones on, props to you. Because if you did this every single day on CNN, if you had the Latino woman and the black man arguing about which culture was more repressed for hours on end, and you didn't cut the microphones and you didn't that to me, the shouting match works. I was just, you know what I was waiting for? I was waiting for someone to start chanting Jerry, Jerry, Jerry as they went to break. That's all Abby Phillips needs. She could be the next Jerry Springer if she just embraced it. All they need is somebody going, Abby, 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 as they go to break. And my favorite part, by the way, is when Ana Navarro goes, he purposely misheard me. Which is, how do you purposely mishear somebody? I don't understand how if you mishear somebody, you mishear them. Oh no, he purposely misheard me. I don't even really think that's a thing.
No, I know you're not.
This country illegally, you are.
And you can act indignant. That's exactly what I just said.
Acting
let me just share Michael.
Other than the black
Anna and share Michael,
please. There are a lot of people from
share
many,
Michael. I think
many
you actually misheard what she. I think you misheard what she said.
No, he purposely misheard.
She said.
I purposely.
Yes, she did.
No, he purposely misheard me. And then he goes, "I purposely." What? How do I purposely mishear you? It's really. This is what's happening. The Democrats are losing their minds. First, they lost elections. They lost the presidential election. They lost the electoral college. They lost the popular vote. They lost the swing states. They lost the Senate. They lost the House of Representatives. They didn't have the House of Representatives, but they definitely didn't win it back. And they lost governorship. They're losing everything. They're losing the media. They're losing public opinion. They've lost DEI. They've lost this woke culture that they adopted and that they rode to victory just 4 years ago. Now they're losing David Hogg. They're losing what's his name? James Carville. It's Jen Psaki, by the way. She's back at it. She was on one of these late night shows. I think it was Colbert. And she's out there talking about how this time it's even worse. Donald Trump's making the country even worse. Leading with cruelty. That's Jen Psaki saying he's leading with cruelty. President Donald Trump is leading with, he's unchecked. And it's worse than we ever thought before. Now what's happening is President Donald Trump is out there totally unchecked. And being unchecked is the worst thing that could possibly happen. And it's even worse than it was before. By the way, President Donald Trump was at a prayer breakfast this morning where he was talking about bringing prayer back to the United States of America. So I don't know how he's leading. I don't know how he's leading with cruelty when he's out there praying with Americans of all races, of all genders, and all religions. So it's very interesting to see. Something that was kind of funny was the return of Kamala Harris. And I did a whole video on this earlier today, but I do want to cover it because Kamala Harris is back and she's just as cringy as she was before. And Kamala Harris has decided, I guess, that now she's got to reemerge into the political landscape if she wants some kind of political future. There's talk of her potentially running for governor in the state of California. There's talk of her potentially running for president again in 2028. She can either govern the largest economy in the United States, or she can be the top of the ticket for the Democrats in 2028. Personally, I would love for her to be the top of the ticket in 2028. I would love for Kamala Harris to be the presidential frontrunner. And if she wants to bring Tim Waltz back, Tim Walz, fantastic. Do it. The Harris-Walz ticket was the best thing that ever happened to Republicans. It made it even easier for them to beat Harris-Walz than they did, Biden. What was his name? Biden-Harris. Pardon me. I forgot Kamala Harris was the vice president. I put those whole 4 years out of my mind. But here's Kamala Harris, and she was. This is her coming back. And she's just seriously the same, hasn't changed a bit. Maybe a little drunker than before, but listen to this.
In fact, please.
Wait, I'm sorry, that's not it. It's where's the beginning? Here it is. Here's the beginning. Nope, that's not it either. Where is it? Oh.
But sadly, this country.
Hold on, wait a minute. Where's my Kamala Harris? I got it here. There's a Kamala Harris clip where she talks about, oh, here it is. Listen, this is her being introduced at the Emerge conference. Oh my God, Dougie's here too. That's so exciting. And Kamala Harris is out there and she's got all these things she wants to talk about and she's concerned about America and she wants you to know that listen, here she is. Here's her new take on the United States.
But sadly, we have seen quite the opposite over these past few months. Now, I know tonight's event happens to coincide with the 100 days after the inauguration, and I'll leave it to others to give a full accounting of what has happened so far. But I will say this. Instead of an administration working to advance America's highest ideals, we are witnessing the wholesale abandonment of those ideals.
The wholesale abandonment of those, instead of witnessing American ideals, we're witnessing the wholesale abandonment of those ideals. I don't even really know what that means. I don't even know what she's talking about. And then, as if that weren't bad enough, she starts talking about, guess what? Guess what? Guess what? Guess what she starts talking about next? That's right, elephants.
Please allow me, friends, to digress for a moment. Okay. It's kind of dark in here, but I'm asking for a show of hands. Who saw that video from a couple of weeks ago, the one of the elephants at the San Diego Zoo during the earthquake? Google it if you've not seen it. So that scene has been on my mind. Everybody's asking me what you've been thinking about these days. Well,
that's what she's been thinking about. Kamala Harris has been planning her political comeback. She's been planning to return to the spotlight so that she can run for governor of California or president of the United States. And what is she thinking about? She's thinking about elephants at the San Diego Zoo during an earthquake. Now, the elephant video she's talking about, I'm sure you may have seen it. It's these elephants and the earthquake hits. And what happens is when the earthquake hits, the mama elephants or the elephants, what do you call it? I guess the adult elephants, they huddle around the young elephant in a circle. They put the young elephant in the middle, and then they all huddle around it. They create what's called an alert circle. And that way, the young elephant is protected by the older elephants. And this is what she's been thinking about. So just in case you were wondering, what has Kamala Harris been doing since she lost the election in historic fashion? She has been going on TikTok just like the rest, just cruising TikTok, just thumbing through Instagram videos, just like the rest of us. She's got a box of wine and her jammies and Dougie's on the couch, and she's just flipping through her phone, watching the elephant videos from the San Diego Zoo. And then when she comes back on stage, that's the first thing that pops into her mind. And she wants to remind everything about it. Wants to remind everyone about it because, again, that's all she has going on. All she can talk about is these elephants. She still has nothing to comment about. She has nothing to add to the conversation. She has no ideas. She literally has nothing at all new that she's created or that she's thought about. Nothing new comes to mind. Nothing is sparking any kind of creative notion about where America should go. It's all the same stuff. It's just her talking about a circle of elephants, which is weird because she's a Democrat and elephants are the symbol of the Republican Party. If she were talking about a circle of jackasses, that would make way more sense. But a circle of jackasses is just like a pro-Palestinian protest. They just sit in a circle, and I won't play the song again, but they chant and Kamala Harris's return to the spotlight, by the way, has prompted a lot of reactions. One of them is from Rick Grinnell, who is a longtime Donald Trump supporter. He's a special envoy. Donald Trump has put him in charge of a lot of different things. You may remember Rick Grinnell was put in charge of Los Angeles after it burned to the ground because the mayor couldn't handle it. The governor couldn't handle it. So Donald Trump brought in Rick Grinnell and said, you're going to handle it. Well, Rick Grinnell was asked, if Kamala Harris runs for governor, would you consider running against her and maybe bringing some Republican leadership back to the Golden State? Listen to what Rick Grinnell said.
I've talked to President Trump about this, and I think the reality is that if Kamala Harris runs for governor, because we've spent $1 billion defining her as stupid, and people believe it because of her own words, if she runs, I think Republicans have to rethink the fact that we have a shot. Yes. If she runs, I would have to look at it. Because my mind, it just changes the calculus on voter registration. That suddenly having the fact that we're behind on voter registration may not be the only mathematical equation in this situation. And so if she runs, I'm going to take a hard look at it and see. So.
Yeah, there you go. So Rick Grinnell, who is a good friend and ally of the President of the United States. Rick Grinnell, who is, I believe, openly gay. Rick Grinnell, who is a Republican. Rick Grinnell, who is from California, looks at it and goes, you know what? If Kamala Harris decides to run, that changes everything. It changes all the mathematics. Those low voter registration numbers we have for Republicans in California, we can instantly fix that if Kamala Harris runs for governor. If Kamala Harris is the next governor. I mean, think about this. You've got Gavin Newsom. He's run the state into the ground. People are fleeing California. The cities are literally burning to the ground. There's ashes where there used to be vibrant communities. Taxes are through the roof. Nobody's moving there. Illegal immigration is crazy. They're a sanctuary state. It's just so poorly run. And now you're going to bring in Kamala Harris to follow that act? Oh, heck no, is what all the Californians are saying. And Rick Grinnell's looking around going, Donald Trump would fly in here. He'd do some rallies for me. I'm sure we could get a lot of other high profile. Heck, I would go. I don't know if that would help, but I would go to California and I would do whatever I could to get Rick Grinnell elected governor. Because we all know that a Republican, a Donald Trump MAGA Republican, could fix California just as quickly and just as effectively as Donald Trump has fixed the United States of America. In 100 days, this country is unrecognizable from where it was. If Rick Grinnell gets his hands on California, in 100 days, California could be a decent state once again, and we could save it. We could save it from the likes of Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi and Gavin Newsom and Dianne Feinstein and all the rest of these people who have just totally spent decades and decades and decades pillaging it and plundering it and destroying it and turning it over to the homeless and the drug addicts and the incompetent and the illegals. We could take back California. Imagine how great America could be. I mean, we are great. Imagine how much greater we would be if we could say, you know what? We no longer want California to fall off into the ocean. We no longer care if California secedes. We're no longer looking to make a deal where we trade California with Canada for like Alberta and Saskatchewan. We're going to keep California and all of its wine, which Kamala Harris apparently is a big fan of. We're going to keep it. And Kamala Harris, by the way, has nobody but herself to blame because she was the border czar and she did absolutely nothing. In fact, Stephen Miller was in the White House press briefing room this morning with Caroline Leavitt, and he was not laughing at Kamala Harris's speech. He was not laughing at Kamala Harris coming to this Emerge ceremony, which, by the way, apparently nobody went to. They only sold like 117 online tickets and they didn't fill the room and there was a lot of merchandise left over at the end of it. But Stephen Miller said, look, Kamala Harris, I'm not laughing. You know what she owes us? She owes us an apology.
The only thing Americans want to hear from Kamala Harris is an apology for joining Joe Biden. Remember, she was the border czar, joining Joe Biden in aiding and abetting the invasion of our country. And we're never going to stop talking about this because what they did to this country is unforgivable. It is an eternal stain on the Democrat Party. Every day we read another story. Every day we arrest another alien they let into this country who raped a child, who beat a woman within an inch of her life, who murdered a mom, who murdered a dad, who trafficked drugs into this country, who trafficked fentanyl into this country, who are responsible for dead and slaughtered Americans. And I don't know what's broken in the Washington press corps, that none of that moves them emotionally. The only thing that gets them exercised is, do we need to have more trials for terrorist supporters? Do we need to have more trials for gangbangers? Do we need to have more trials for illegal alien invaders? Even though Congress and the Constitution clearly say that you can expel invaders and illegal aliens quickly, efficiently, and properly. This president has literally saved America, and I could not be prouder. I could not be prouder, as I know Caroline feels the same way, to come every single day to this building where we have a leader sitting in that office whose first, last, and every thought is the safety, prosperity, security, and sovereignty of the citizens. That's an important word, people. Citizens of this republic.
Yeah. And Kamala Harris out there giving speeches isn't doing her any favors, because when she puts her name back into the mix, all of those bad deeds she did, all of the terrible things she did to this country, all of the I guess you would say duties she ignored, all of the laws she refused to enforce, all of the things she was complicit in. The open border policy, the millions and millions of illegals, the murderers, the thugs, the drug addicts, the human trafficking, all of that rests on her shoulders because she threw in with Joe Biden. She was the border czar. She never even went to the border. She hadn't been to Europe either, she told Lester Holt. But she wasn't the Europe czar. She was the border czar. And really, I think Caroline Leavitt said it best at the end of the press briefing this morning.
Your time. Thank you, everyone. And just to add on the Kamala Harris point, I think I speak for everyone at the White House. We encourage Kamala Harris to continue going out and speaking engagements. You'll hear from the president at 11 o'clock. See you guys later.
Yeah, I'm all for it too. More Kamala Harris speaking engagements. That's what we want. We want more cackling. We want more hypocrisy. We want more cringeworthy statements. We want to keep people informed of all of the information about Kamala. We want Kamala Harris running for stuff. I want Kamala Harris to run for both. I'm going to be honest with you. I think the gubernatorial election is in 2026. That's great. Let Kamala Harris run for governor in 2026. And when she loses to Rick Grinnell and the Republicans can take back control of California, then she can go and she can run for president 2 years later and lose to Donald Trump or J.D. Vance or Don Jr. or whoever. It doesn't matter. It could be anybody. It could be, I don't know, it could be a bobble. This gnome on my desk could probably beat Kamala Harris in the general election in 2028 if she's on the top of the tickets, especially if she has Tim Walz with her. By the way, you have to hear what Tim Walz said about white people, white men. Specifically, Tim Walz, we know he's infatuated with like men and tampons, but listen to what he said about white men. Before we tell you that, I do want to remind you about our good friends at Colonial Metals Group. Colonial Metals Group with CEO Paul Stone, our good friend. This guy's amazing. What he's been able to do with gold investments and protecting and allocating and bulletproofing your savings is incredible. And one of the most generous things he did was put together this free gold guide, which you can claim at freegoldguide.com/K, freegoldguide.com/KAYE. Gold is it's a fantastic safeguard, has been for generations. And in Colonial Metals Group's free gold guide, you're going to learn how to protect and grow your retirement savings with a gold IRA. You're going to learn how simple it is to safeguard your retirement tax-free and penalty-free. You're going to learn how there are IRS loopholes to protect your financial future when you invest with precious metals. And there's a limited time offer up to $7,500 in free bonus silver, which is either sent to your house or stored in their vault. Either way, it's a fantastic offer. It's a really incredible offer. It's an offer that really is irrefutable because all they're asking you to do is download their free gold guide and teach yourself about the benefits of bulletproofing your savings with gold and precious metals. If you'd like a copy, go to freegoldguide.com/KAYE, my last name, or you can click the link in the description of this video, freegoldguide.com/KAYE. Tim Walz, not Mike Waltz, Tim Walz, was on some show. He was at some other, again, they're hauling all these people out there because they're trying to, what they're doing is they're fishing. They're pitching Kamala Harris. They're pitching Tim Walz. They're trying to see if any of these people stick. Chris Van Hollen sent himself to El Salvador to see if anybody cared because maybe he could rise up as a leader of the party in 2026 or 2028. Well, Tim Walz is out there talking about how he was chosen because he has a unique superpower. Listen to this.
I knew I was on the ticket, I would argue, because we did a lot of amazing progressive things in Minnesota that improved people's lives. But I also was on the ticket, quite honestly, because I could code talk to white guys watching football, fixing their truck, doing that I could put them at ease. I was the permission structure to say, look, you can do this and vote for this. And you look across those swing states, with the exception of Minnesota, we didn't get enough of the
Tim Walz, sorry, this makes me laugh, says the reason he was on the ticket, he wanted to believe, this is at the Harvard, by the way, Institute of Politics, he wanted to believe the reason he was chosen for the ticket was because of the progressive things he did in Minnesota and all of the really great progressive ideas he was able to install, like putting tampons and menstrual, stuff in the men's room where men don't actually men's rights. That's what he thought that was great. He had the gay football players and he was talking to them about coming out of the closet or whatever. He thought because he was so progressive and so liberal and because he had the tampons in the men's room, that's why he was picked and put on the presidential ticket. But then he goes, I think I know the reason. It was actually because I could code talk to white guys who were watching football and fixing their trucks.
I knew I was on the ticket. I would argue because we did a lot of amazing progressive things in Minnesota that improved people's lives. But I also was on the ticket, quite honestly, because I could code talk to white guys watching football, fixing their truck, doing that I could put them at ease.
Okay. Is there I'm a white guy, so I already know my answer. But is there any white guy who watches football and fixes their truck and apparently does it all at the same time? Is there any white guy out there who watches football and fixes their truck and looks at Tim Walz and goes, man, that guy puts me at ease? Is there anybody out there who says, oh, Tim Walz, yay, with his flamboyant hand gestures and his jazz hands and his screaming and hooting and hollering and his weird dance moves and his cringy wife? Is there any white dude, any truck fixing football watching white dude out there getting the code talk from Tim Walz going, man, that guy really makes me feel good about Kamala Harris being president of the United States? No. The only white dudes for Harris were the white dudes for Harris, people like Ben Stiller. And Ben Stiller, I think even Ben Stiller thought Tim Walz was cringy. Ben Stiller's not out there watching football and fixing his truck. He's not out there getting code talk. I don't even know what that is. Whatever code talk is, Tim Walz doesn't speak it. He doesn't speak white guy code talk. He needs like a Rosetta Stone course or something because evidently something's lost in translation. But the guy's so delusional and so demented, he feels that's the reason why he was added to the ticket, because they saw Kamala Harris, a California Indian, African-American, whatever. I mean, Donald Trump said she became a black person. Still one of the greatest quotes of all time. But whatever she was, whatever her hair, she was a middle-class California, Indian, African-American, liberal woman from Howard University, all these things. The white dude fixing his pickup truck and watching football couldn't talk to her. So they went out and they got Tim Walz to do it. That's the guy. Listen, if you're a white dude and you're watching football and you're fixing your truck, you don't want to talk to Tim Walz. You know who you want to talk to? JD Vance. You want to hang out with JD Vance. You want to have a beer with JD Vance. In fact, JD Vance was literally pouring beers for the troops in Germany just a while back. JD Vance talked about football on the stage at the RNC. He talked about football. He went to the Michigan game, the Ohio State. We all know he broke the Ohio State trophy. He's such a football fan. If you're going to be code talking to white guys who fix their pickup trucks and watch football, you're going to lose an election. But if you're code talking to anyone, you're going to lose an election. But that's what these Democrats think. They don't think, is there anybody out there who is just honest? Is there anyone out there who's just legitimate? Is there anyone out there who's authentic? Can we find an authentic male voter, middle class? Is there anybody out there who might be MAGA, but we could find a Democrat that could actually authentically reach out to them and speak their language and connect with them and explain why the Democrat Party is the better party for them moving forward? No? All right. Well, is there anyone who can code talk and pretend that they're that guy? How about Porky Pig out there or Elmer Fudd, who can't even fire a shotgun, but thinks because he's wearing a camouflage hat with safety orange Harris Walls on the front, he can code talk to white dudes. Instead of just code talking, why not just talk to people? Instead of pretending to be what you're not, just be what you are. Just be better. Actually, don't be what you are. You're never going to win. You're never going to win. You're never going to win with anyone. And look, the fact of the matter is the Democrats are losing anyway, not because of the way Donald Trump talks or JD Vance talks, not because of what Donald Trump says or the way he says it, not because of the football or the cars or the hunting or anything of that, but because of the effectiveness of the president. The effectiveness of the Republican leadership. This is a CNN report on the border. This is a CNN liberal reporter on the border. And we've seen this from CNN before, and you're going to see more of it. He's talking about how if he wanted to go to the border and report on illegal immigrants, he couldn't even do it.
I mean, after spending years down there to see the numbers the way they are now, I knew they were going to go low. Never could I imagine this low. Where VP Vance was in Eagle Pass the other day, December 2023, when things were at their all-time worst, you were getting like 3,000 to 4,000 crossings there a day. There were just 14 there the other day. Yeah. If Fox were to send me down there right now, I'd have trouble finding a single migrant on camera. Completely different than what we're used to. So,
sorry, that was Fox News. I thought it was a CNN clip. Fox News. And he's saying, I used to do stories about illegal border crossings. It's now impossible for me to do a story about an illegal border crossing. I go down there, there's no illegal border crossings. And that's thanks to President Donald Trump. That's thanks to J.D. Vance. That's thanks to Tom Homan. That's thanks to Kristi Noem. That's thanks to all of the people that have been put in place to fix the problems created by who? That's right, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And that's the reason why the Democrats will continue to lose. When you couple that, the ineffectiveness of their leadership, they were the cause of the problem. They were the cause of the problem, and the media ignored it. Here's Stephen Miller, by the way, yelling and screaming about the media ignoring the problem of illegal immigration and not blaming the Biden administration like they should have.
It is a sad reflection on the state of our media and many of the outlets represented in this room that you obsessively try to shill for this MS-13 terrorist. Well, no coverage occurred in your papers about any of the Americans that were raped and tortured and murdered by the illegals that Biden was importing into our country. You know, you talk about due process. The Biden administration made the decision to give extensive due process to 2 trained Nicaragua terrorists that were apprehended at the border just a couple years ago. They were 2 gentlemen. They were from Venezuela. They were members of trained Nicaragua. The Biden administration Border Patrol apprehended them and made the decision to provide them with extensive due process, put them onto a program known as supervised release, and put them on ankle monitors so that they could go through a lengthy legal, judicial determination as to whether these legal aliens who had just set foot on U.S. soil might want to live in the United States for the rest of their lives. What was the result of that decision? What was the result of that choice that was made? Those 2 men kidnapped a young girl named Jocelyn Ungary from her family. They beat her, they sexually assaulted her, they tortured her, they stripped her, they murdered her, and they dumped her body. That is what the Biden administration's policy was. Most of your papers never covered her story when it happened. To the extent that you covered it at all, it was because President Trump forced you to cover it by highlighting it repeatedly over and over again. He had to shame you into covering it. And each and every one of you that sides over and over again with these MS-13 terrorists, to the extent that you have the financial means to do so, you all choose to live in condos or homes or houses as far away from these kinds of gangbangers as you possibly can. If I offered any one of you a rent-free home with no taxes to pay in any of these gang neighborhoods, and I said your neighbors are MS-13 terrorists or Mexican mafia or Sinaloa cartel or trained Nicaragua, I couldn't pay you to live there. But yet you, with your coverage, are trying to force innocent Americans to have these people as their neighbors, and that one day their daughter may be abducted from their home and raped and murdered. So you're not going to get an ounce of sympathy from this administration or President Trump for the terrorists who've invaded our homes and our country.
That's your daily dose of Stephen Miller sticking it to the American media, who are complicit in the illegalization, if you will, of America. The illegal aliens who came over here were done without the media is always the watchdog. Isn't that what they say? The media is the watchdog of the government. Well, they were sleeping. They were sleeping on the job when Joe Biden was president. They weren't the watchdog of the government when Joe Biden opened up the borders and allowed these criminals and gang members and thugs and rapists and murderers to come in and take over apartment complexes and rape and murder Americans and steal from them and eat the dogs and eat the cats and eat the pets of the people who lived there in Springfield, Ohio. They didn't do a thing about it. It was all Donald Trump. And when Donald Trump went to the debate with Kamala Harris and he said, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're putting them on planes, they're flying them in all over the country. When Donald Trump said New York City is Eric Adams, the Democrat mayor of New York City, said, we will never recover from this. Eric Adams, the Democrat mayor of New York City, picked up the phone, called Joe Biden and said, please For the love of God, stop sending illegals here. We can't handle it. We don't have the resources. We don't have a place for them. Crime is through the roof. Homelessness is through the roof. Drug use is through the roof. The police can't handle the crime we already have, let alone the new crime from these illegal immigrants. When the Democrat mayor of New York City called Joe Biden and said, stop it, the Democrats arrested the mayor. The Democrats pressed charges against the mayor. The Democrats, instead of fixing the problem of illegal immigration, they went after the mayor and they tried to disgrace him. They tried to charge him with a crime and they tried to get him ruined. And now he's switching parties. And guess who his biggest ally is? President Donald Trump. It's really ridiculous. It's really wild how these things happen over and over again. And the media will not stop. They will not stop. They will continue to side with the illegal immigrants. They will continue to side with foreigners who came to this country against the law and are a threat to their own fellow citizens. And that is why they'll continue to lose. That's why it doesn't matter if it's Kamala Harris or AOC or Bernie Sanders or any of those people, which, by the way, those are Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris's biggest idols are the craziest lunatics on the left.
AOC and Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, but that wasn't even. She called out everybody, man. Cory Booker. She called out Jasmine Crockett. They're elevating the people with the worst ideas. They're elevating the people who are so far removed from common sense. They're elevating the people who have no business leading anybody, have no ideas on how to lead, and of course will just lead us down the path to despair. Those are the people that they want. Those are the people that they are going to try to continue to elevate, and they're going to do it with ideas that are failing and that are bad. And I'm all for it, because the more the Democrats push people like Kamala Harris, and the more we can remember the terrible effect that her vice presidency and Joe Biden's presidency had on our country. Where am I? There I am. The better it is for the Republican Party moving forward. And even if we had weak leadership, which we don't, but even if we had weak leadership in the Republican Party, it would still be easy to just railroad everybody, especially when Donald Trump's winning. Donald Trump brought back yet another hostage.
All right, Mr. President Trump, I want to thank you for what you've done for me and my family. I just mentioned to Adam that I wanted you to know, everyone on your team, everyone that have supported this effort, that you know that we greatly appreciate it. Okay, I wanted you to be able to meditate on how you affected personally lives and the difference that you've made. I'm a 60-year-old grandfather and father, so I can't put words in how excited. Give all grace and honor to God. But he used instruments, and there have been a lot of people behind the scenes who have done a great work.
That's Tony, what's his name? Tony, hold on, I have it right here. That's Tony Holden. He was a defense contractor, and he was being held on trumped-up drug charges in Kuwait for years. And President Donald Trump brought him back. President Donald Trump was talking about doing a deal with Ukraine. Well, guess what? We have now a deal with Ukraine. Here's Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, to explain that. Remember that deal to rebuild Ukraine where we get a lot of their precious metals and all that other stuff, and in return they get to reap the rewards of American investment? Well, guess what? That deal's done.
Thanks to President Trump's tireless efforts to secure a lasting peace, I am glad to announce the signing of today's historic economic partnership agreement between the United States and Ukraine, establishing the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund.
I mean, that is something that Donald Trump has been promising since he became president, and now it's done. Do you remember when he talked about, he went after American Institutes of High Learning and said he was going to get rid of the DE&I? Remember, he said that we're going to uphold the Supreme Court ruling that you cannot racially discriminate at Harvard University and others. Well, that's done too. Here he is on News Nation yesterday.
As you know, it was won at the Supreme Court. And what we're doing is we have a country that's based solely on merit now. And that's the way it is. If somebody's out there doing a great job, and this includes getting into colleges, if you've worked really hard, and we don't look at race, we don't look at color, we don't look at height or shortness or weight. If somebody is doing a good job and they worked and they got great marks and they got great board numbers and they get rejected at this Harvard, which has been so disgusting, so horribly. I mean, so think of it. They hired Bill de Blasio and Lori Lightfoot, the two worst mayors in the history. They pay them a fortune.
But that was the course, though.
They're teaching management.
The
Let
course
me just
was,
tell you that
the course was.
Now, Stephen,
shut up, Bill O'Reilly's. Stop trying to interrupt the president of the United States. By the way, how old is Bill O'Reilly? Bill O'Reilly's getting old. He's getting up there in years. But this is what Donald Trump is doing. He's creating an America that is common sense based. It's not hard. You think about it and you go, okay, is this common sense or nonsense? And if it's common sense, you do it. If it's nonsense, you go, there's no way we're doing that. And if you are picking people to run the United States of America, if you're picking people to go to these elite universities and learn to be the future leaders, which is what they're doing. Harvard, what are they known for? Law school, medical school. They churn out politicians. They churn out lawmakers. They churn out Supreme Court justices. They churn out presidents and governors. What about Yale? Same thing. How many times did Tim Walz remind us that J.D. Vance went to Yale? He could be a future president. And all of these, they're very important positions. Don't you want the best people for the job getting into these schools and getting trained by these schools? Or do you want people there who are only there because, they fill a requirement? Stephen Miller talked about that in the press briefing earlier today, too.
This administration has opened investigations into universities across the country for violating. We talk a lot about Supreme Court rulings. Universities across this country are in plain and direct violation of the Supreme Court's ruling that affirmative action, as in racial quotas and set-asides, are illegal. Students must be admitted to universities on a color-blind basis. But we have demonstrated through clear evidence that our university system, including our medical schools, and perhaps particularly our medical schools, are engaging in race-based discrimination, racial set-asides, racial quota schemes, and other efforts to evade the Supreme Court's ruling, and again, the plain text of federal statute. So universities are on notice, and universities are already facing the financial consequences of their noncompliance with federal law. The clearest example that we're all familiar with, of course, being Harvard, which is engaged in repeat, systemic, and sustained violations of federal civil rights law.
By the way, it's not even white people at Harvard. It was the Asian people at Harvard. Harvard was discriminating against Asian students. And an Asian student brought a lawsuit against Harvard and won. Because I don't know why they were discriminating against the Asian students, but whatever the reason was, a well-qualified, merit-based Asian applicant was overlooked for, I believe it was an African American or a Latino applicant who had whose scores were nowhere near as superior, whose grades were nowhere near as elite. And the whole fact of the matter is, if you're in the operating room, you're having brain surgery, do you want your Harvard-educated surgeon to be the person who was the smartest and studied the hardest and got the highest test scores and knew your brain inside and out? Or do you want the person that Harvard let in because they needed a racially balanced class of 2029? In Donald Trump's world, it's all about common sense, merit-based. If you are the most qualified, then you get the job. If you're the least qualified, you don't. And that's all. And we're colorblind. We're colorblind, and we're race blind, and we're sex blind, and we're short blind, or whatever he said. And we're just going to, in fact, it's just common sense. Caroline Levitt, she talked about it again in the press briefing.
To mark President Trump's triumphant first 100 days in office, we've detailed all week how President Trump has been hard at work delivering on the promises he made to the American people. And yesterday, the president once again showcased why he is the most transparent and accessible president in American history when he held his fourth open press cabinet meeting. Every cabinet secretary went into great detail, explaining how their respective agencies are making life better for American families and businesses. And then the president allowed all of you to ask questions on anything you wanted afterwards. One of the main reasons President Trump won nearly 80 million votes, swept all 7 battleground states, and received a resounding mandate from the American public is because of the contrast he presented during the campaign and continues to this day. Everything in President Trump's agenda is grounded in one thing: common sense.
Everything in President Donald Trump's agenda is grounded in one thing: common sense. Everything in President Donald Trump's agenda is grounded in common sense. Kamala Harris's agenda? Wait, hold on. Well, that wasn't it. It was this one. It was I wanted the elephants again.
In fact, please allow me, friends, to digress for a moment. Okay. It's kind of dark in here, but I'm asking for a show of hands. Who saw that video from a couple of weeks ago? The one of the elephants at the San Diego Zoo during the earthquake? Google it if you've not seen it.
That's Kamala Harris's platform. Google it if you haven't seen. Man, if you think those elephants are scared now, if you think those elephants, they were running around, they were like, oh my God, there's an earthquake. Quick, we got to protect our young. Oh my God, quick, make an alert circle. If you think that these elephants are skittish and scared and frenzied and frantic now, just wait till these elephants in San Diego hear that Kamala Harris could be their next governor. You're really going to, that's going to be, that alert signal, a circle that they build is going to be ginormous. Listen, we've got so much more. We've got so much fun stuff in store. Every single day, there's some new narrative that we're chasing down. There's some new truth that we're trying to uncover. And there's some new lie and fallacy that we need to just, really just rip to shreds. Plus, with Kamala Harris back in the political spotlight, there's going to be a lot more of this junk to debunk. Oh, that's good. That's gonna be our new motto: junk to debunk. And if you don't subscribe to this channel, then you're gonna miss out on a lot of stuff. You're going to be scratching your head, going, "I wonder what's true and I wonder what's fake news. I wonder what I can believe and what I can't. I wonder who's fighting and working for me, and I wonder who's working against me." But if you do subscribe to this channel, then you'll never have to worry about what's the truth and what's not, about who's lying and who's not, about who's working for you and who's working against you, about what dangers lurk on the horizons, what evils are lurking about trying to take you down and your country with it. If you subscribe to this channel and listen to our videos and our podcasts every single day, you are going to be well informed. You're going to be educated. You're going to be inspired, enlightened, and you're going to be so well equipped. You're going to be so well trained that no matter what battle rages, no matter what enemy shows their ugly face, you're going to be ready and willing and more than able to fight so you can save the Republic. Now, coming up, by the way, and there's more on Mike Waltz, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. Coming up, by the way, we're going to do it in our after party. After the party is the after party, as we all learned from that guy who's in jail now. You know, the guy, what was his name? The one with the girls? R. Kelly, thank you. R. Kelly told us after the party's the after party. Well, the party's over. We're going to the after party at the Kayetriot Club. And if you're not a member of the Kayetriot Club, now's the time to join. It's $10 a month. If you buy for the year, it's way less. And you get access to the after party. You get free stickers. You get discounts at the Kayetriot shop. It's really, in fact, today, we are going to make a new discount code. So if you want the brand new discount code for 25% off at the Mark Kaye shop, then go to Kayetriots.com right now. Join us for the after party. It begins in 3 minutes.